no matter what people want you
Beekeeping
to.
got started at D-Town Farm in 2008 when the question was asked about pollination and who could be our beekeeper. And I remember thinking to myself, I was at a DBCFSN meeting, that I could probably do it because some years earlier I was in a situation where it was actually a yellow jacket that actually kind of buzzed me in the face, and I wasn't motivated to swat it away. So I thought possibly I could be a beekeeper. So the winter 2008 2009, I took some beekeeping classes from a local beekeeper. I, after that, also took classes at Sweet on Detroit, and we got our first hive. It was myself and another beekeeper, and we had a bee mentor, Rose Kurtz, that helped us actually bring 2 hives to D-Town Farm.
The importance of bees. Now, what my mom was talking about when the question was raised as to who can we get to beekeep and who can we get to pollinate, to work with pollinators. About 1/3 of all the fruits and vegetables that we eat are pollinated by honeybees, are pollinated by bees. There are multiple varieties of bees. There are 3 different types that are typically used in North America that we manage in hives, and that would be the Italian variety, the Carniolan variety. Those are the typical 2, and there have been others that have been introduced more recently, such as the Russians and the ones that we're using this year at D-Town Farm, Saskatraz bees. So they're the ones that are responsible globally now for pollination. Now I mentioned those 3 or 4. There are solitary bees. There are bees that do not live in a societal arrangement as the bees that populate our Langstroth hives at the farm. If I might be so bold, I'd like to talk about how I got involved.
Please do.
Well, in 2012, I decided to come to the farm with Mama Abba. Mama Abba here taught me everything I know about bees. She started me out. But what happened was, speaking of pollinators, I happened to watch a documentary on public television that focused on the plight of honeybees and pollinators. And what struck me about that particular, or a point that struck me within that documentary, was the fact that in China, in some places they were pollinating by hand. I'm a guy who loves to eat, and I said, well, if this carries on and there are no bees, well, I'm going to be up the creek. So anyway, I said if there were ever an opportunity for me to become involved in helping pollinators, in this case bees, I would do so. So fast forward, my son became involved in the gardening project. And at that gardening project, they had some bees. And I said, oh, there's an opportunity for me to become involved in bees. And I knew about the farm. I reached out to somebody that I knew, and he hooked me up with Mama Abba, and the rest is history. We, over the years, Mama Abba and I have experimented with various approaches to management.
Yes.
You will see, during our presentation, for example, we'll show you frames of comb that the bees have drawn out. At one point, what we were doing, we decided to go with foundationless frames. And that turned out to be somewhat a disaster.
Somewhat a disaster.
But we learned,
Yes.
we've moved on, and we've experimented and had some ups and some downs.
Yes,
So this year
yes.
has been one of the highs.
Yes, it has. Also, Baba Karanja mentioned some solitary bees and bees that are just in the wild. There are bees that pollinate that we don't actually keep in hives. And one of them that everybody knows is really the bee that's most common is the bumblebee. It's kind of fat and yellow and black and very kind of hairy looking. And they also do a lot of pollinating for us. They actually live in the ground. So you need to be careful if you see bees that are near the ground, coming out of the ground, because if you step on that hive, you won't do it again.
You'll know it.
You'll know it, yes.
Another thing about bees that's interesting is that all bees, not all bees, pollinate all flowers or all plants.
That's right. That's right.
The division of labor in that regard, I can't run it down to you, but there are some bees that do tomato plants. Honeybees don't necessarily do tomato plants.
Yes.
And other bees obviously focus on other plants. There's another interesting thing about bees, and there's some scientific research that showed that bees have a sense of color, in a sense. That is, they are attracted to the frequency of the frequency that's put off, that's generated by the colors, and therefore attracted to the plants that have that frequency that they're programmed for, I guess you could just say.
Yes, yes.
So they may go back to the same bees and the same flowers in the same family that have that kind of frequency. So it's just a whole bunch more to learn about bees and the fascinating facts about them, about their biology,
Yes.
about how what the division of labor is across the various classifications of bees, and just quite a wide variety of things that one can spend a lifetime learning about. In fact,
Yes.
obviously there are people that have PhDs that focused on entomology and specifically honeybees
Yes.
and other types of bees. So it's quite an interesting topic, quite a topic that one can, again, spend a lifetime learning about and doing work on. So we would encourage you young folks, if you have an interest in science and have an interest in outdoors, have an interest in bugs, have an interest in entomology, that is a potential career for you.
Yes.
Right?
And of course, if you're particularly interested in beekeeping, come out and visit us at D-Town Farm.
Absolutely.
We're
We'd love
there.
to have you.
Yes, we'd love to have you.
Please, and you'll be the future. The young folks, you're the future. So come on out and help us develop these skills so you can take them into the future. One other thing here, something that we haven't focused on is the commercial aspect of beekeeping and bees. From the standpoint of the scholarly profession, you have those that pursue science and the PhDs. On the commercial side, you have folks that raise bees commercially and have countless numbers of colonies, many thousands of numbers of colonies. And what they'll do on a seasonal basis is they will load those bees up, some number of those colonies, load them on a truck, and truck them to California or truck them to various parts of the country where pollination is needed.
Yes.
For example, if they go to California, and they will pollinate almonds. It's
Yes.
it's in great demand.
Yes.
And some pollinate blueberries, and just all the variety of fruits and vegetables that need to be pollinated on a commercial basis. If you're a big time commercial beekeeper, I think you make a pretty decent living.
I think you make a decent living.
It takes a lot of financial capital up front to get into it because of the scale that you have to operate at.
Yes.
But if you got it, I think it could be a pretty decent life. In addition to the pollination services that folks offer, there are folks that keep bees just to extract the honey and sell the honey, either locally, like we'll be doing with the honey that we have, but the scale that many people's operations happen to be at is so massive that they're able to supply folks like Costco or various chain stores and things of that nature. So many avenues that are available to folks who work with bees. So we would strongly encourage you to do some research, find out what the possible opportunities are, and pursue them. We think that you will really. I've enjoyed working with bees.
I have enjoyed working with bees.
You learn more. There's a lot of trial and error. You learn as you go, but you get into it and you realize the value, and it's just a great. If it's a hobby for you, a great hobby, or it can be a great livelihood for you.
Yes.
And not to mention what you're doing for the world.
For the environment,
The
yes.
benefit that you are delivering to the world.
Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another.
Greetings. I'm Baba Karanja. I'm a beekeeper at D-Town Farm, and I'm here with,
Mama Abba Ifeoma, also a beekeeper at D-Town Farm.
and what we're going to do is introduce you to some of the equipment that we use in beekeeping, as well as give you an introduction to life in the beehive. So we'll start with equipment. First of all, we'll start with the equipment that the humans use, and we'll start with the protective equipment, and that would be, in this case, we have a jacket that has attached to it the veil. So that's what we use to put on. And so they have two forms of it. You have a jacket. We also have a full length suit as well that covers you from head to toe. So we always, when we're in the bee yard, we always put a jacket or a full length suit on to make sure that we're protected from the bees. The bees, when they sting you, it can be a bit uncomfortable. So it's always suggested that you put those on. Particularly the veil here comes in handy so that if a bee happens to get into your face area, the veil is very good to have because you don't want to get stung in the eye, which I have had happen. Next, from the human side, we have the gloves. Now the gloves consist of leather as well as a long upper that slides up along your arm to give you some added protection there. So we have leather gloves, and from the human side, that's basically it. Let's move into some of the hardware and some of the things that we use, the tools that we use. So we have two tools here at this time. We have what is called the hive tool, which is basically just a metal tool with a chamfered edge on it that allows us to make our way in between the boxes that I will show you about later and pry things apart internally and externally on the beehive itself. We also have a bee brush that you use sparingly, I would recommend,
Yes.
because the bees are not too happy about coming in contact with the bee brush. But anyway, these are tools that we use. Two of the primary tools that we use. Additionally, we have what is known as a smoker. We use smoke with the bees in order to help to calm them down so that they don't sting us. They won't have the desire to sting us so much. And when the bees come in contact with the smoke, they sense it as being a forest fire. So with the fire, what they will do is gorge themselves on honey that might be in the hive, and when they gorge themselves with the honey, it tightens their body so they can't bend, and therefore it makes it hard for them to try to sting us. So it's also protection for us in that regard as well. And it also helps for us to relocate the bees. That is, you will see in a later part of our presentation when we open the hive, you'll see that the bees will be all over the hive. If we want to move the bees to a lower portion of the hive, we can introduce smoke, and that will typically drive them down to a lower part of the hive itself. Now, let's take a look at the hive equipment itself, the hardware in the hive itself, the woodenware basically that composes the hive. We have first here what is known as a telescoping top. This is the very top of the hive. It covers the hive, as you can see, and just has underneath, basically, it's just an open space that we call a telescoping top. The next part, beekeepers, not all beekeepers may use this part, but this is known as a shim. We use it on our hives to give us some extra space so that we can add feed in the winter. And it allows us to have an upper entrance for the bees, so there'll be two entrances for the bees. We have an entrance at the bottom, which you'll see later, or you see now, I'll point out to you now, and then they can also enter up top here. So we have the shim. The next part of the hive, we have an inner cover. The inner cover, you see there's a hole here that the bees can use to come up to the top here, and if there's some feed up here, they can come and get feed, or for whatever reason they would like to come up, they're able to do that. As well as, I just mentioned earlier, a moment ago, that We have a top entrance, so when they come to the top entrance, they can then go into the hive from this hole here. All right. The next part of the hive that we have in the woodenware, we have what is known as a super. Now this box here, this super here, is known as a medium super. There are 3 different types of supers or boxes. You have a medium super, you have a deep super, and you have shallow. And we at D-Town Farm run medium supers for all of our hives. We have in the past used deep supers. They're good as well, but they're pretty heavy when they get full of honey. So we opted to go with the smaller medium. Some people, even the medium gets to be too heavy because when it is full of honey, it weighs a little over 30 pounds. So that depending upon the age and the health of someone as a beekeeper, they may find it easier to maneuver the smaller hive, the smaller super. Oh, and I'm sorry. I also into the super here. What we do is we place what's known as a frame, and this is where the life of the bees is basically lived. They draw out the comb here, what you see is honeycomb, and I'm not sure if you can make it out, but this is raised from the surface here, so all of these individual cells is where life in the hive is lived. The queen, which you'll learn about a little bit later, she lays her eggs in these cells, and then the bees will go through their metamorphosis. They go through 3 stages, which Mama Abba will be sharing with you in a bit. So this is a medium frame, an example of medium frame. The deep frame is deeper itself to fit the deep super, if that's what one is using. Now the construction of this of the frame is the bees have already drawn this out, but beneath this, in the center, is what is known as foundation. Now we use at D-Town Farm, we use wax foundation. There are a couple of options for foundation, but our approach is wax. But you have what is called a plasticell, and you have 1 or 2 other types of foundation. Another approach to frames, to management of the frames, is that you can go, and I think we will talk about this as well when we do the presentation at the hive. There is also an approach where people decide to go without foundation, and that's called the foundationless approach. So we do that from time to time as well. So all of these, the super itself, the frame itself, I think that would be it. These have to be constructed, or they can be purchased so that they can be constructed. So typically what we do at the farm is that we purchase ours as a kit and we build our kits at the farm. So this particular super, the size super that we have here, is called a 10 frame super. So as you will see, and we'll point it out to you when we do the visit to the hive, the live hive, you'll see that it will be populated with 10 of these in this super. Now there are a couple different sizes of supers. One is an 8 frame super, and then we also have what are nukes, that typically contain just 5 frames. Now the next part of the hive I will talk with you about is the very bottom of the hive. The hive or colony. We also refer to the hive as a colony as well. So we have what is known as the bottom board. Now in this case, we have a screened bottom board, allows for great air circulation for the bees so that they don't become overheated during the summer months. It helps to relieve that. As well in the winter, it gets to be pretty cold, so there is a slot here that we have that we can put an insert in that helps to reduce the amount of air circulation in the winter, the cold air circulation. And then finally here, well, before I go to that, let me contrast that or compare that to this is a a screen bottom board, and what we have here is a solid bottom board. So depending upon the beekeeper, what his or her preference is, you have both of the options that are available to you. Now, what this piece is called an entrance reducer. Let me see this. Put this back up here. The entrance reducer, I mentioned to you earlier that there's an entrance here. This is the primary entrance that the bees use to go in and out of the hive. In the winter months, what we do is we reduce this space here to help to prevent mice from entering the hive. And one method that we use for doing this is putting in place what's called an entrance reducer. So there are a couple of options that you can use by rotating it to change the amount of the entrance space. But anyway, we put the entrance reducer in there. So in addition to reducing the ability for mice to access the hive, it also reduces the area that cold air has to get into the hive. So that will be the entrance reducer. So those are the parts that make up the colony, the woodware that make up the colony. Now, during the course of the season, what we will do is, as the bees fill these pieces of equipment up, as they fill the supers up with honey, with nectar, with pollen, as well as the bee population itself, because the bee population of the hive itself can reach about 60,000 bees when it is when it is full of bees. So what we will do in order to expand this hive or the colony is we stack these boxes on top of each other. And when we make a trip to the apiary, you get a chance to see that we have multiple boxes stacked on top of each other out at the farm. So, at this point at the farm, we have boxes that are stacked 5 high. So we're going to reduce that for the winter months. But anyway, just to give you a sense of the dimensions of those. All right. So that takes care of the hive equipment. One more thing here. How do we get bees to populate the hives? A couple different ways, but one of the ways that if you are new to beekeeping or you need new bees, what we will do is order what are called packages of bees. And the packages of bees, the bees come in a container like this. And there may come anywhere between 3,000 and 10,000 bees, depending upon the size package that you get. So basically the bees will come housed in here. They will come along with a queen, which you'll learn a little more bit about shortly. Comes with a queen, and then what we do is when we get to we have the colony set up, the woodenware set up. We just take the bees, empty them into the hive or into the colony, put the queen in, let the bees get acclimated to the queen. It takes them perhaps about 3 days or so to become acclimated to the queen. The queen comes in a cage. After about 3 days, we will come back. What we will do is we'll return to the hive and release the queen from the cage. The bees that are in the hive will have become familiar with her pheromones and will accept her, and life goes on and is great.
Okay, about the life cycle of the honeybee family. So first of all, there's 3 characters in the hive. The worker bees, the drone, and of course the queen. Here's a representation of the characters. The queen, you'll see she's the largest in the hive. Her abdomen is much longer than the others. The worker is really the smallest character in the hive, but the workers do all of the work, and they do a variety of jobs, and they're all female. The jobs that they do are, 1, they are nurse bees, so they take care of all of after the queen lays the egg, the worker bees assist each of the eggs to become through the larva and through the pupa stage. Those are the nurse bees. Then we have the scout bees. The scout bees actually go out and they find the sources of nectar and pollen and come back to the hive, let the other scout bees know where they found some by doing a dance called the waggle dance. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the waggle dance. But anyway, they let them know by doing the waggle dance where exactly, geographically, the nectar and pollen sources are. And then the drone, which is the male in the colony, the drones actually mate with the queen. Not necessarily the queen that's in our hive, but there are drone congregation areas that we don't really know where they are, but the drones fly out and they mate with queens from all over, from various hives. All of the bees live about 28 to 30 days, right around 28 to 30 days. What this is a representative is how they develop from an egg to larva to pupal, how many days it takes for a live bee to emerge. And that's the other thing. When the bee emerges from the hive, it is a full grown and ready to work. It's full grown and it's ready to work. What else about the cells, about the life cycle?
I might mention that the queen has a lifespan of about 4 years.
4 years, yes.
Averaging about 4 years or so. And the drone, when the drone mates with the queen, that's it. It's a one-time deal, and life is over for that drone.
Yes.
So the queen takes on enough genetic material from the drones that genetic material will last her basically a lifetime. She lays about 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. So she has, from that exchange of genetic material, she's able to do that over the course of 4 to 5 years.
Is there anything else? I think that's just about it.
Good.
Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another.
Welcome everyone to D-Town Farm Apiary. This is the front part of our apiary. Today we're going to give you some insights and visit here with in the bee colony that we have here. We have 2 colonies here at the farm. We have this one here, which is located at the front of the farm. Then we have an additional colony that's located in the back of the farm. Today, Mama Abba and I'm Karanja Famadou, and
Mama Abba, Ifeoma.
we are beekeepers here at D-Town Farm, and we'll be your guides. All right, so to get started, what we'll do is, now you recall from the first part of our Learn Shop, we introduced you to the equipment that's used in our beekeeping activity. So now you get a chance to see how it looks in action. You get a chance to see the bees in action. You get a chance to see the equipment in action. So first of all, let's take a look at, you recall this was a telescoping top, and we'll open this and introduce you to the next level. Okay, and what we have here is a shim, which gives us some additional spacing, or a shim or spacer that allows us to put sugar on top of the inner cover here if needed over the winter for feeding and other things. So this is a shim here, and then we have, whoops, okay, go ahead.
The other thing the shim does is it provides an upper entrance for the bees to the hive. So the very front has got the hole right there in the front where the bees can come in, besides at the bottom where the bees can come in.
And you mentioned that, great. So looking at entrances, basically the entrances to the hive here, you have the bottom board, which you may recall us talking about earlier. So the bottom board, where the bottom board and this bottom box meet, or this bottom super, that forms the entrance, the main entrance for the hive. So you can see the bees, the ladies coming and going. And you recall from our conversation earlier as well that the majority of the bees in the colony are females. Okay, so you can see them coming and going at the main entrance here, and then as Mama Abba mentioned earlier, we have a top entrance here as well, formed by the spacer, as well as on the inner cover here, which we'll see. I'll separate this out for you. That cracking that you hear is propolis that the bees have put in place as insulation. They fill all cracks with the propolis.
You can see it right along the edge here.
So now you see the bees. Of course, you saw them at the front entrance there, and here they're on the top of the inner cover. This is known as the inner cover. And this inner cover here has an opening. That's what they're surrounding right now. It's an opening here that allows them to go up and down in the hive. This is one way they can get up and down. And if there is feed at the top, it gives them an option to get to the feed, as well as enter the hive and then go into the hive on the upper entrance. Okay, so let's take the inner cover off.
Let's give them a little smoke.
Yep, that sounds good.
And we're almost done smoke here.
So you recall we also introduced you to the smoker earlier on. We use the smoke to calm the bees, and also it signals to the bees as far as they interpret the smoke. When they encounter the smoke, they respond as though it's a forest fire. And when it's a forest fire, what they'll do is try to consume as much honey as they can that stiffens their bodies. And when it stiffens their bodies, from the beekeeper standpoint, it is a safety valve for us, because when they stiffen their bodies, they can't curl to sting us. So it's a benefit to us in that regard as well. So you see how the bees scatter when Mama Abba introduces smoke to them. So they're not so crazy about having that smoke in their eyes, and they're in their eyes, pretty accurate. Okay, so we'll next go to the next level here and take the inner cover off here. And here is the inside of the hive. Oh, you see bees on the bottom of that inner cover, as well as bees on the top. So this is their home. So they take full advantage of it, use all the space that's there. Here. Okay. All right. So here we have frames. You recall as well, we have frames that we put into the supers, and this is the basic home for the bees. In this case, we're using a 10-frame hive, so we've got 10 frames here, and over here we have basically about about five frames of bees. Bees are walking across 5 frames. Now they may have honey over here. We'll pull one out so you guys can see that. But again, these are I think all of these are female. This time of year, as I mentioned, about 80 to 90% of the hive is composed of females. So that only gives about 10 or so percent of males. At this time of year in the fall, the males are all pushed out of the hive. The males have no value at this point in the year. So what we primarily see is a hive full of females. So it'd be the worker bees, these worker females here, as well as the queen. Don't know if we'll be able to see the queen today or not, more than likely, but at any rate, that's how that's the composition of the hive. Okay, so let's take a look at. I'll take a look over here, because it doesn't look like a whole lot is going on over here, Mama Albert.
Okay.
So we'll open this one, take this one out, just to show you what. Now this frame here So as you recall, this is what the frame looks like. And we see here, this is a frame that the bees have built the comb out on. And that's what they do. We want them to build the comb out throughout the hive, and they do that from top to bottom. That's one of their primary goals, primary purposes as workers. So it is in the comb here that life is lived. They will put honey and nectar. Well, they put nectar into these cells. The nectar is then dried out, and it is what becomes honey. They will also put in their pollen as part of their stores, and then they put the honey, and you'll see. We'll show you an example of capped honey. It is also where the queen lays her eggs. The queen lays about 2,000 eggs a day. So at various locations in the hive, we will see you have, well, the queen will lay her brood, lay her eggs, and that's where the life cycle begins and is carried out, at least from egg to larvae to pupae, and then to the bee finally, as you may recall from our conversation where we looked at the life cycle of the bee. So this is what we have. This variety of bee is called the Saskatchewan bee. Comes out of Canada. It is a fairly new variety to North America. The most commonly used, the most common variety that beekeepers use here in North America are Italians. That's one, and the next one will be Carniolians. Then you have some others that are Russians are, I guess, increasingly being used, but those are the primary ones. Any other points there you think of, Malala?
Nothing that I can think of.
Now, when we take a look at the bees, when we pull them out, one of the things we do, we always want to inspect as we go through the hive. We're inspecting to see if there's anything that is out of the ordinary, anything abnormal. We can take a closer look at the bees to see if their wings look like they're in good order, if you will. There's a predator that the bees have to fight off that is known as varroa mites. And if the hive is infested with varroa mites, what can sometimes happen is the bees develop what are called K-wing. So instead of having a V kind of shape to the wings, the wings develop a K shape. And we know that that's abnormal, and we know that's a sign that there may be something amiss in the hive. So we look for that as we open the hive and go through the hive. And we also try to keep an eye out for the queen, because we want to make sure that we don't smash the queen or do anything to harm the queen. The queen is the nucleus of the hive. She is the one that sends out the messages to the hive through her pheromones, which we talked about earlier, and the bees respond to her pheromones, as well as the inner communication between the bees and pheromones as well. But she is the core of the hive. She's the central character in the hive that makes the hive go, if you will, at least in terms of the central controller. All right, we'll put this down here. Let's put it over here. And we want to see if we have some honey. Want to take a look? Oh, so let's see. Want to see if we can find some honey?
Let's see if we can find some honey.
All right, good deal. Go over here. And you recall that earlier when we introduced our tools, this is a hive tool. So we've got two types of hive tools, and you can see now how we employ them as we work in our hives. So we use them to push apart. So these frames are all propolized together. So that's one of the reasons we use the hive tools to pull those apart. And then once we get them apart, then we can lift them up. Lift the frames up.
This is a beautiful frame of honey.
All right. So this side here,
It doesn't have much.
this side here, actually we have nectar. I don't know if you can tell, but there's some glistening liquid in here. So that's nectar that the bees have put in the cells, and the nectar will be dried out through their wings, and it will turn into honey ultimately. And then after it's turned into honey,
They'll put this white coating over the top of it. That way we know that it's been dried to a certain state that we know of as honey. Until then, they're still working on drying it out with their wings. Shall we show them this side? I think it's more.
we can get another one here.
Okay.
Or, let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, this side is all.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's capped, all capped. Let's see.
So if you take a look at this side, oops, let me see here. If you take a look at this side up close, this is actually this is about 85% dried, so got 85% honey. It's all capped off, and it's a really beautiful kind of a golden color. Of course, the color that the honey is depends on the flora that the bee have visited for nectar. And right now, of course, we have no idea. We can get an idea that this is probably wildflower honey, mainly because of the very light color. But honestly, it's a mixed variety of honey at this point.
Yep. We have wildflowers, and of those wildflowers, we got clover, we have goldenrod, and behind us we have a collection of flowers in the planting area that the bees can also visit. So the bees, when they visit to go and get nectar, gather nectar that they bring back to the hive, they can fly 2-3 miles, and sometimes even further than that. So these ladies here are the workers, and these ladies that you see at the entrance coming and going, they go out and fly that 2-3-4 mile distance to gather the nectar and bring it back in. They also gather pollen. Now,
they're called the scout bees.
Yeah, the scout bees. Okay, you can see the pollen when they bring it back in. Sometimes there's sacks. There's some sacks that are on their legs that come when they come back. You'll see it be full of pollen. At this point, it'll send you offhand, but that's what they'll do.
Brood?
We can try to see if
we can find a little brood.
All right.
Gotta love one another. Gotta love one another. Gotta love one another. Gotta love one another. No matter what people want you to believe, don't ever turn.
At this point, what we're looking at is brood here on this frame. These are the brood here is for your the basic bees in the hive, and not the males. The males, known as drones, which we've focused on before, their brood pattern is the brood pattern is slightly different, and the appearance of the brood in the chamber is different. It has a larger mounding on the top. So you see that the bees, they cap. See how those caps there? Mm-hmm. Underneath each of those is a bee.
A female.
A female, that's correct. And she will eat her way out of from beneath the cap to emerge to take her place in the hive, in the colony, and do her work. So these bees here are they will be what we call winter bees, and they'll be the bees that will help to carry the colony safely through the winter, hopefully, or successfully through the winter, I should say, hopefully.
And certainly that's not all of the bees that's going to carry them through the winter, but that's just a sample of them.
Yep, good point. There have been others that have already eaten their way out and joined the remainder of the hive. We hope what we shared with you today has been informative, you've learned something about the lives of bees and the beehive. We certainly would encourage you to come out and join us in our beekeeping efforts through the course of the season here at the farm. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your interest.
Have a good one. Peace.
Peace.
Gotta love, gotta love, gotta love one another. 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 No matter what people want you to believe.